So let's get going with the first topic that we have for the panel today, which is on the whole area of setting your MDF budget and the allocation to different partners. Ryan, I'd like to start with you, if I may. So at Extreme, you have a well-established, well-defined and operational MDF program up and running. We know that the world, of course, that we work in constantly changes. You referred to the last 2 years in particular, where we saw significant change in our markets and what was going on in the world. Could you give us some insights, in terms of what you're doing today, what you're experiencing today around MDF budget and partner allocation, and maybe give us an insight into, has anything materially changed since the world changed for us over the last 2 years?
Yeah, sure. Perhaps a bit of context, John, just to begin with, so folks can understand sort of how we work MDF at Extreme. So our program is proposal based. It's 100% proposal based across both distributor and resellers. So that gives our disties, our resellers, and of course our local channel and marketing teams the flexibility to be able to pivot quickly to meet needs. So they can plug into things that might be tactical short term. They can equally plug into things that might be more strategic long term as well. So I think it's all about a balance between getting the value from those regional teams. They probably know best how to get the best out of their partners and their channel, and blending that with a level of centralized oversight and obviously compliance as well. And I think there are probably three elements to it. I think one of them is what I'd call consistency and consensus. So in terms of budget numbers, our MDF budget is part of an overall contra budget that also includes rebates and incentives. That's probably fairly typical, but in terms of consistency, I mean keeping those numbers as consistent as possible and not springing surprises on people in terms of huge budget swings or changes. We found over the last couple of years that that's one of the simplest things we can do, so that those local teams can plan ahead in plenty of time and not necessarily need to wait for 100% confirmation of budget before they can get started with planning. I think the second one is communication. So we've developed a state where there's sort of obviously we have a quarterly planning cadence where each quarter's plan is finalized before the quarter starts. But what I mean by the ongoing conversation is that any requirements that are coming in from the regional teams, that they're making those central teams aware and saying, hey, next quarter I might have a particular requirement for this. Can we make sure there's an earmark in the budget for that? So I think that's good, because that helps us again avoid surprises. We've made a lot of progress over the last 3 years. We used to run an MDF program based on surprises. Now I think it's very, very rare that we get any surprises, because everybody knows who does what and everybody knows who to talk to and to make them aware, and that works better for everybody. And then the final one you touched on, John, earlier, I think, in terms of allocation of MDF, it depends on your ability to prove that the MDF is delivering a return to the business. Because if you're spending, that's great, because you can show that the budget is being fully utilized. But the question is going to come from the execs and the C-suite. Okay, what are we getting? And I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think just very, very briefly, there are different ways we look at that at Extreme. We don't use any one single method or one single metric. We're looking at it from a few angles. One of those is top line, where we're very simply looking at what's the business being generated by a partner, and what are we investing in them in MDF. So that's not necessarily a direct correlation, we know that, but it gives us a very, very high level indicator. There's a sort of mid-level, which we call the go-to-market motion measurement, which is where we're tagging MDF activities and saying, hey, okay, so this one is trying to drive net new cloud, for example. Okay, let's measure the uptick in net new cloud 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later. And then there's the third piece that we're using, which is the attribution, which is where we're taking contact data that partners submit to us from their activities. We're feeding that into an attribution model. So we're able to roll that up or break that down however we want to, and get some kind of insight into the level of influence that these activities are having.
That's super. Thanks, Ryan. And Mimish, if I can ask you to give your perspective, if there's anything you'd add to that, please.
Yeah, actually, I smiled when Ryan mentioned no surprises, right? So because it resonates with some changes we've made on our end at Barracuda in terms of how we managed our MDF process and how we allocated budget in the past, where we weren't as transparent, and it wasn't intentional. It was just that the program needed to be set up in a certain way. We needed to evolve some of the rules and the processes and how we engage with our partners and with our field marketing managers and our channel sales organization, who we work very closely and very much aligned. So from a no surprise perspective, you know, we've actually worked with channel mechanics in the last year. It's been a tremendous partnership to evolve Barracuda's previous MDF model to what it is today, which is really a proposed-based model. And with that, being very, very transparent and clear with both our sales organization, our field marketing managers who work with our channel partners and our partners in terms of, you know, here's the new process, here's what your budget could look like, and being very, very transparent on understanding what our strategy as a company is and our goals and as a company, and how that could align with our investments through the MDF funds that we provide to our partners.
Super. Thanks, Mimish. Very clear message there. No surprises. Finance teams will love that, of course. Kenneth, anything that you've seen, you know, from the work that Channel Mechanics is doing in the market that augments what you've heard from Mimish and Ryan?
No, the guys have covered it really well, John. I think it's the consistency, just to reiterate, the consistency and the no surprises is really important, both internally and indeed externally. And then I suppose just to overlay on top of that is, how do you present that to the partner community in terms of ease of doing business? And lastly, how do you measure the return on investment in the program? And I know we'll cover that a little bit later on, but they're kind of the keys to making it all successful.
Super. Thank you, everybody. Brenda, probably a good time then to segue into poll 2, please.
Okay, thank you very much, John. So here we're asking, what percentage of your eligible partners participate in your MDF programs? If it's less than 25%, 25 to 49%, 50 to 75%, or more than 75%. And then, of course, if you don't currently run an MDF program for partners as well. And as we mentioned earlier, if you have any questions for the panel at any stage or on any of the topics they're covering, please do feel free to pop them into the question box. Okay, I think we have most people voted now, so I'm just going to close it out and pass it back to you, John.